Hey, what is going on guys? RvzStealth here, and today we're going to be doing a little bit of a different video. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at the two highest win rate champions right now in the game, being Malzahar and Anivia, and kind of breaking down why these champions are so strong right now and what makes them very strong picks for 7.13. So that being said guys, let's get started. So right now in patch 7.13, based on win percentage, Malz and Anivia are two of the strongest mid lane picks for this patch. Malz is sitting at a 54.66% win rate, very close to 55%, and then Anivia is basically sitting at a 54% win rate. Now in my opinion, if a champion's win rate crosses 53% and they also have a decent play rate of above 3%, it usually means that champion is too strong or they're just overtuned a little bit and they need some sort of nerf to bring them down in power. If you do take a look here though, for example, like Karthus and Fiddle, even though they both have 53% win rates, I wouldn't say they're OP picks, mainly because they only have a 1% and then Fiddle has a 0.26% play rate. So you can't really just look at the win rate for a champion to determine how strong they are. You got to look at play rate and a bunch of other things to really determine if the champion is that strong in a certain patch. So the first reason, and probably the biggest reason to why both of these champions are very strong for solo queue and why their win rates are very high right now, is because they are the two fastest shoving mid lane champions in the game. Malzahar, even pre-6, has a very fast shove on the wave. With his EW combo, he can shove out a wave in less than 5 seconds. Anivia, once she hits level 6, also can shove out a wave in less than 5 seconds, and not a lot of other mid lane champions can do that. There are very few other mid lane champions and just champions in general that have a faster shove than these two champions, and the reason why this is so strong is because number one, it allows you to pressure the enemy mid lane champions so that if they want to leave lane, they're going to have to miss CS, and if they don't leave lane, then they're not really going to be able to influence the map and have an influence on the game other than just sitting in lane and CSing. And once you do shove the lane in with Malz or Anivia, you can look to go for roams, you can look to get vision down and just help your team out. On a lot of other mid lane champions, you can't do this to that extent, which is why I think is a major reason to why Malz and Anivia do have very high win rates in this patch. Now, the second reason that ties into the first reason as to why these picks are really good is because you take teleport on both Malz and Anivia, and what you do is you constantly shove that wave in and you can look for teleport plays. If the enemy mid laner does end up roaming at some point, then what you can do, and what I do a lot of times, is I'll ping my teammates that the enemy is missing. I'll just spam ping them, because if you spam ping your teammates, unless they're complete idiots, then they should back off, and if they don't, then you can't really do too much about that. But if you're spam pinging them and they back off, then you shove that wave in and you get a lot of tower damage off. Usually when I'm playing these two champions, I'm able to get a good chunk of tower damage off, or I'm able to get first blood tower a lot of the time, and that first blood tower gold that you get is worth 650 gold, and it's pretty much game over at that point. If you get that amount of gold, you're going to be snowballing super hard, and it's just going to be very easy for you to influence the other lanes, because now that you've got your mid lane tower down, you can roam top, you can go bot lane, and you can help your team out to grab towers. So that is another reason to why these champions are very good in this patch. Now, another major reason to why they're very strong in my opinion is because they're very low risk, high reward champions. Now, the first reason to why they're low risk, high reward is because they both have passives that are very forgiving. So the Malzahar passive allows you to take a free ability or just a free CC spell, and it's going to have no effect on you. So therefore, you can position a little bit more aggressive with this champion, and even if you do make a misstep at the start of a team fight, let's say Ashe tries to arrow you or something, if your passive's up, you're just not going to be able to get picked off, and it just allows him to just stay a lot more safe, especially come those mid to late game team fights against those abilities that are longer range and against those champions that do want to try to pick you out. And then with the Anivia passive, her laning phase is just very, very strong, because you're not going to kill Anivia in the laning phase unless you do end up camping her. First, you have to take out her egg, which is hard to do in the first place because she's a long range champion. Her auto attack range is 600. It's one of the longest for any mid laners, and therefore it does allow her to sit back and just farm in the laning phase. She doesn't have the fastest shove pre-6, so it means that she's generally gonna be shoved in on her side, so she isn't very easy to gank in the early game at all, and therefore you're just gonna get past the laning phase a lot of the time and you're never gonna die in lane with Anivia or even with Malzahar. And then I guess a more obvious reason to why they're low risk, high reward is because they don't really have any crazy hard skill shots to land in their kit. Malzahar especially, he's got a point and click suppress with his ultimate. His main damage source in his E is a point and click ability, and then his Q is the only thing that's a little bit hard to hit, but if you do get some practice on Malzahar, then you should be able to get the timing down on your Q with only a few games played on the champion. With Anivia as well, she's only got one skill shot in her kit, and it's actually not that hard to land as long as you know how to play Anivia well. What you can do a lot of the time is you put your ultimate down first to get the slow, and then it very easily allows you to line up that Q, and if the enemies try to dodge your Q, then they're gonna have to walk back into your ultimate, because what you do is you place your Q to where they're going to be running, and if they walk into that Q, they're gonna take the stun and they're gonna take a lot of damage. If they walk back, then they're just walking back into your ultimate, which allows you to get a lot of damage off from your E. And then they also just have very few counters right now in the laning phase, so it allows you to blind pick these champions, and there's not too many picks that are really gonna beat you in lane. The only pick I found to struggle with a little bit with Anivia and sometimes with Malzahar is Kassadin, and I just ban him out every game so I don't have to deal with that matchup. I don't really think there is any other lane that is super hard to win or you're just gonna get stomped on, so that's another reason to why they're very low risk, high reward. The next reason to why they're very strong champions overall is because their ability to zone and their ability to fight well in a closed area is some of the best for any champion in the game. If you're fighting in the jungle with an Anivia, then if you don't end up winning that, you probably played Anivia wrong, because her ultimate just allows you to completely block off an area, and if the enemies want to try to walk through, then they're gonna take a ton of damage from your ultimate. The same thing kind of goes for Malzahar, because your Q with Malzahar, especially once you get a few items, is on a 4-second cooldown. It does a lot of damage, and it's just a very good zoning tool, especially if you do have the Rylai's, because every 4 seconds you can just throw that out, and if the enemies are grouped up, it's going to do a lot of damage. It's going to silence them for 2 seconds, which is extremely strong. So the zoning potential that both these champions have in their kit is another reason to why they're very, very strong picks. And then the final major reason to why Malz and Anivia are very strong picks is because they have the ability to do a lot of burst damage, but they also have the ability to do a lot of consistent damage. So for example, if you get your full combo off with Malzahar, that does a lot of burst damage, but he also has the potential to do that consistent damage if he puts his E on the opponent, uses his W on them, uses his Q as well. That rotation of spells is only on around a 4-second cooldown once you have max CDR, so you're constantly gonna be able to dish out a lot of consistent damage in team fights, and you also have the ability to deal burst damage. Same thing kind of goes for Anivia. Once you have your ultimate down, if the enemies are walking through that, you're just gonna have your E available to do a lot of burst damage to them, and if they just stand in your ultimate for a super long duration, then that's gonna do a lot of consistent damage, and it just allows you to be a really good threat in team fights. You never really have to wait too long to use a rotation of spells, and therefore most of the time you can be very useful during team fights with both of these champions. So lastly here, to round out this video, if we go back to my first point that I talked about at the start of the video as to why these picks are very strong, the ability to shove in a wave in solo queue very fast is very important in my opinion, especially for a mid lane champion. So when you're playing either Malz or Anivia, run teleport on them. Once you do hit level 6, look to constantly be shoving the wave in on the opponent, unless your jungler is coming to gank or something. If you communicate with your jungler and you want to try to get a gank off, then in that situation, don't shove the wave in. But most of the time, you should be looking to always hard shove the wave and then look to make a roam play, look to get vision down, and just always be pressuring the enemy under their turret. If you do this, it's not going to allow the enemy mid laner to really roam at all or have an influence on the game, and you're going to be slowly chipping down that enemy mid lane tower to the point where if they do end up going for a roam, you can really punish them with these champions because of their fast wave clear. Always be spam pinging as well. If the enemy mid lane champion does leave, just spam ping your teammates because you are running teleport, so you don't have to follow them. You can stay in lane, get tower damage off, and then if you do see them like show up bot lane on a ward or something, then you can use your teleport to go help out. And I think that's just a really good strategy with these two champions to just climb and just get a lot of elo in solo queue. So if you guys did enjoy this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you have yet to already. So thanks for watching, guys. Have an awesome day, and I will see you in my next video.